So in this episode, I'm going to be discussing why the shaking or the potential dismantling of the US aid could potentially be a blessing for Africa. Let me say that again. The reason why I think the shaking up that is going on with the US aid brouhaha in America could potentially end up benefiting Africa if we play our cards very well. And I want to go deeper into that. But before then, this is a good place to have content that will motivate, inspire, especially as it has to do with the African continent in terms of diaspora engagement, Africa development and growth, entrepreneurship and business. These are the kind of content that we share here. If it resonates with you, why don't you go ahead to subscribe and click the notification button so that anytime I come up with great content like this, you'll be notified. All right, let's jump into it. So I say this in the sense that, for if you have not been following the news recently, when the government changeover came, one of the first institutions that, quote unquote, is being threatened or facing existential threat is the USAID. And I would say it's an agency that has done a lot for humanity, a lot, particularly for those in the developing world or underdeveloped world in terms of churning out aid packages, especially in healthcare, education, maybe agriculture, and a whole host of others. Yes, it's not been smooth sailing. They've also had I call them silent power. Sometimes it's a quid pro quo thing. They give you money in exchange for you dropping some of your core values or dropping something or doing something in favor of their cause. Yes, that could be argued in another day, but I do not discount that USAID provides jobs for even people in Africa. They have offices all over the world that provides employment for people. So in that case, we don't discount what they've done at all. But the most recent occurrence is that you and I know from the news is that President Trump and his team, they really are into America first. And that is what they promised their people, and they are delivering on that promise. So you could see that things like international aid and those things, it's not their thing. And I would want to use USAID not as a means, and it's kind of a means to an end, right? Today, it may be USAID. Tomorrow, it may be another aid agency that may decide to scatter their operations, pack their bags, and leave. Tomorrow, it may be the British, it may be the German, it may be the Japanese. Who knows? Nobody knows. Anything can happen. I've grown to understand this fact that nothing surprises me anymore. So my issue is not about, why have they suspended or why are they thinking of suspending aid when the aid is helping people? That's not my argument. My argument is, why do we need USAID in the first place? Why do we need these other overseas aid agencies in the first place as Africans? That's the question, because so that if they decide one day to cut that aid, if they decide to not make that aid available, then what are we going to do, or what are our people going to do as citizens, as nations? What are we going to do? Because somebody could make that decision. It may not be today, it may be 5 years from now. So my reasoning is, why do we have to depend, or why should the operations count in the grand scheme of things, right? So I'll use this as an example. This is kind of a quick context as an example. In my view, there's been, right before I jump into the example, there's been several research papers that have been written to ascertain the fact that currently in Africa, there is more money that comes through our own people, our own diasporans, sending money. We call it remittances. More money comes from remittances than all the aid packages and things mummed up together. There's more, more income that countries, particularly within sub-Saharan Africa, receive from their own citizens outside their countries, more than USAID and all the other aid agencies combined together. That should tell us something. That's on one side. On the other side is, in my view, I believe sometimes these aid packages and aid agencies, to me, is a pretext for us to be very lazy and dumb. And this is the reason why. Anytime an individual, maybe it's yourself or a family, or even in this context, nation or nations, typically, anytime your back is against the wall, what happens is if you take it in your stride, you tend to come up with innovative solutions to your problems. I will give two examples for you to see that. Anytime either an individual, or in this case, a nation or groups of nations, their back hits the wall, there's no option. Typically, that's when their innovative juices begin to flow. And this, the first example is this. When this artificial intelligence, I would say, competition started probably maybe 5-10 years ago, and it heated up, there was a lot of innovation going on, particularly within the context of United States and China, or I would say China, basically. But US was very, very, very rapid in the development of the infrastructure that would make having generative AI or generative artificial intelligence, that will make it, I would say, very easy and human-like, right? So fast forward in 2020, 2023, the birth of ChatGPT. The whole world hailed that technology as awesome, okay? And prior to that, there was this moratorium that was placed on making sure this technology stayed within the confines of the United States. And the technology is not just about the software. The software is the easy part. The hardware is the difficult part. And the hardware has to do what we call chips. It's not chips or fries. You know, our friends from US call potato, the British call it fries, the American call them chips. Okay, I mean the American call them fries rather, British call them chips. That's the other way around. I'm not talking about that. These are electronic components that resides within computer mainframe to allow the computers to be able to do I would say, crazy computations or advanced computations at great volume. And in doing so, there are two things: the chips and then the energy that is being used to compute those AI systems. They take so much energy. They suck so much out of the national grid, the electricity grid, that even in the US, there have been instances where certain cities, their lights, you know, there was electricity interruption in a city, all because of some of these big AI, you know, I would say AI power farms or power stations, whatever the name they call it is, because they require so much energy. And then they require these chips that are used for heavy computational analysis or heavy computing. Let me put it that way. So in the race to build the best chips to run these AI backends, a few companies jumped up in the race. There are companies like what do you call it, AMD, Intel, and many others that were competing in this space. I think IBM and a couple of others, several others, right? NVIDIA and so many. So they were competing to come with the most innovative, the best chips that can deliver these kind of AI things. And then eventually, a company called NVIDIA won. So their chips became the gold standard. It's very expensive. I think one chip probably is about $100,000. Massively expensive. And to build any large language model, which is the AI model like ChatGPT, like Claude, like Google Gemini, they are all language models, like Facebook Llama. These are all models. So to power these, you need several of these chips. You're talking about maybe hundreds of thousands of them to build massive large language models, right? So why am I saying all these things? I say this to mean that the AI race was America's to lose because they jumped ahead. And then quickly, they enacted laws to make sure that this technology does not fall into the hands of their competitors, predominantly China. So chip sales were banned to China. You can't sell NVIDIA chips to China. You can't sell NVIDIA chips pretty much anywhere except probably, of course, a few US allies and US itself, period. So what in this case happened was that China was caught flat-footed. Their backs were against the wall. Their backs were against the wall. And how AI happens that you need the chips to power the entire system, and then you need to train the model. So you get your chips, you get your power grid, everything lined up, and then you begin to train models. So it's a very expensive exercise. A lot of money was being thrown at companies like ChatGPT, Anthropic, and the rest. They were raising billions of dollars because the knowledge was that to power an AI system requires billions of dollars in investment. So fast forward, Chinese people had their backs against the wall. They couldn't get these US chips. So what happened? We were all there a few months ago when a small research company in China came up with a model called DeepSeek, their R1 model. And it beat these legacy ChatGPT models by a mile. Not only in performance, it beat it by the cost to building it. They used a fraction, you're talking of like sub 1% of how much it costs ChatGPT to train their own models. It cost them a fraction of 1% to build their own. And it was free. It's open source. Open source means that the code is available. Anybody can take a copy of that code, do whatever they want, modify it, do whatever they want to do with it. Whereas ChatGPT was closed source. That means it's protected by heavy intellectual property. Nobody knows ChatGPT's code or Anthropic. Nobody knows that. This new one, better performance in terms of reasoning ability. What it can do, ChatGPT has a model that it costs $200 a month. These people give it out for free. And to rub salt to injury, it only costs them about $5.5 million to train that model, compared to billions of dollars. Why am I saying all these things? I say this to mean that whenever your back is against the wall, your creative juices go to work. I don't know the details of as to how DeepSeek got to where they are. And frankly, OpenAI and even I think the US intelligence agency, they are investigating to find out whether maybe somebody siphoned some IP knowledge to them or whatever, they stole some chips or whatever it is. I think they're doing that. But I will leave that for them to decide. But for us, the principle is this. And I don't think they could actually steal a few or, buy a few from the black market to build a massive system like this. I think China may have innovated their own chips that do not require that heavy electricity usage, and that is way cheaper and has caught the world flat. That's why the stock market tumbled right after the release of DeepSeek. The reason is with OpenAI, ChatGPT, and the rest, Anthropic, Google, all the rest, the big tech companies in Silicon Valley in America, their model was we need billions and billions and billions of dollars to scale AI for the whole entire world. So they got investors to believe that, oh yes, we need to fund billions and billions and billions in the hope of getting trillions and trillions. But the Chinese model has shown that you probably may not need all that billions. It's just waste of money. Why don't we innovate to find out if we can find something cheaper, something super efficient that doesn't require all this hula baloo? That is what I'm talking about. When your back is against the wall, you tend to innovate. The second example is Ukraine. You and I know that when the Russia and Ukraine war started, Ukraine didn't have any capacity. I think it was just the bravery of their men, their tenacity, their passion to save their country, their never give up attitude, and then a coalition of allies who felt they were being mistreated. So the allies decided to fund the war, basically. Give them all the equipment. Initially, they were reluctant to give some of the powerful equipment, but as time got on, the war became very entrenched and brutal. The allies were compelled to give their best. So from little firearms here and there to a point where Ukraine started receiving F-16 fighter jets, right? And receiving long-range attacker missiles and the rest. Now, a time started coming where Ukraine saw the writing on the wall that they will not be able to get this kind of sustained donor funded war. They will not be able to get, it's not sustainable, right? And it's also very subject to who is in power and who is not. Classic point, Donald Trump didn't want to have nothing to do with the award, didn't want to support it, and he didn't make any, he didn't hide that fact. It was very obvious. His team were aligned to him. Ukraine saw the writing on the wall. And what did they do? They started building their own defense industry. They knew they couldn't rely on Western supplied weapons continuously. So watch out for this space. Today, Ukraine manufactures some of the most sophisticated military drones in the world. They are manufacturing some of the most sophisticated unmanned military vehicles in the world. They are manufacturing some of the most robust fighting equipment, tanks Ukraine made. Why? When your back is against the wall, situation in life will slap you to the point where you have to start thinking. And this is where this USAID thing about Africa, I think, is going. Things are going to shape up that way if we play our cards very well. And I will throw this in here. I was looking at some market data or economic data for several African countries, and I'll be doing a breakdown of countries. It's going to be fascinating, maybe in the next coming weeks. One of the countries that really caught my attention was Burkina Faso. So I was looking at how, yes, they are being led by a young man, charismatic military dictator, military man, military coup. He took power forcefully and then decided to throw out the French. He doesn't need their aid, doesn't need nothing. Just say, hey, look, let's couch our own destiny. We are a poor country. We're not denying that. But it doesn't mean we have to just be begging and beg. So we'll couch our own destiny. So over a period of time, I was thinking that would just tank the economy. Boy, I was wrong. When I was looking at their numbers are even better than even some established countries. And why? This country has thrown out all the aid. They are not subscribing to all those kind of things. because they don't want the strings that are attached. They believe in the African dignity. So this is my question. Yes, USAID will bring food, let's say to hungry people, starving people, and stuff in Africa. Will bring maybe clothing. But the point or the question I'm asking is, why should USA be bringing food to Africa when we have the most fertile agricultural land possibly in the whole world? Probably, maybe if not after Ukraine or that area, then maybe Africa probably may have the most fertile agricultural land more than anywhere else. Why do we need to be importing food? Or why do we need to be getting donor funded or donor food to feed our people? That shouldn't be happening. That will stifle the local agriculture production of the local farmers. That stifles their productivity. It stifles their ingenuity. It stifles their creativity. Because no matter what they do, they can't compete. Number two, why do they have to be bringing second-hand clothing to Africans? They have no, I mean, why do we need that? Would that not stifle our textile and fashion industry? We can create our own. Whatever it is, we can create our own. Why? Wouldn't that be a hindrance on that? I believe it is. It's going to be. Yes, so in all the good things that it has done, I also think that it's done some damage in the sense that it numbs our creativity. And the bulk part is most of the time when this aid happens or they come, they just get into the wrong hands, man. They get into the hands of corrupt politicians who who end up being the real beneficiaries of the aid, not the people. The corrupt person, let's say they bring 20 truckloads of rice to a developing country to help feed the poor. I'm telling you the truth. What's going to happen is that a big man or a strong man somewhere is going to take probably 16 or 18 of them, stash them in some warehouse somewhere, and begin to sell them on the open market. And the funny thing is that you go to those kind of cities and the market, you see, oh, rice, so rice with USAID, and it's being sold on the market. What's happening? Yes, the intention is not the correct intention for it is not being realized. What is done is that it's killing local rice farmers because the big man is the only one who's going to pocket that. He's going to pocket the fruits of USAID efforts. So whatever USA wants to do, to me, I don't really care that much. And frankly speaking, Americans who have voted for who their leaders are in alignment with the leadership of if the existing trend was what they wanted, they wouldn't have overwhelmingly voted for change. So I don't think the world would have to blame America for, let's say, cutting off USAID. Maybe that is what America needs. America, maybe they are doing it because partly they are in debt also. Probably they are in debt more than any country in the world. They are in trillions of probably 20 more than $20 trillion in debt. I don't know of any African country in that much debt. Yes, Africans are heavily indebted too, but maybe they are deciding whatever they want to do their money for. And I think, what don't you think they have that right to also determine what they use their money for? I think so. So I believe what Africa needs to do is prepare ourselves. The crux of it is, can we prepare ourselves mentally, physically, emotionally, that look, anybody can take their aid any day. Let anybody take their aid any day, anytime. We don't care. It will not affect us. Yes, there may be a few exceptions, maybe some countries that are really, really, really hard hit, like let's say South Sudan or conflict areas. Those things, they are force majeure. The acts of nature, right? Maybe horrible earthquake or something. God forbid something nasty has happened in a place. Yes, they will need aid. Even America, there are states that need aid, or hurricane happens and then FEMA will get involved to provide aid. Those things happen. Those things are normal. But you don't use aid to build your country. Because at the end of the day, the aid, it's the politicians that benefit. And USAID and most aid agencies, they are aware of this. Why do they keep doing it when they are aware that it's the politicians who end up benefiting from all their donor things? It doesn't really trickle down. A few things that they do that trickles down. A few things. So I believe if Africa can come together, to me, and begin to couch a path and a destiny where we sit down that, okay, look, there's poverty. We are not doubting that. There are things that are not done well. But can we sit down and because of these kind of pressure, because aid is being cut to us, because we are heavily indebted, because interest rates are all jacked up, because our currency exchange rates are all jacked up, because of all that, can we bundle together to now begin to innovate our way out of this? And I believe China has showed us the way. That if your back is against the wall, you can innovate. Because the moment you develop a taste and an appetite to rely on these foreign aid, you are in big trouble. You become susceptible to their commands and their alluring attitude. Because everybody has an interest. They give you in one hand and collecting from another hand. That is what Burkina Faso has done. And I'm very, very impressed by their leadership. Say no to all these foreign aid. Let's figure something out. We don't need to live in big mansions or big whatever it is, but we can live somewhere. And I believe that is what their mindset is. We don't need to eat French fries, but we can eat yam. There's nothing wrong with that. We don't need to eat pizza. We can eat our own jollof rice. So these are priorities that I believe as we begin to think through, it will help us as people. And I would want to solicit your opinions and your comments. If you have, ideas, or if you are even contrary views, I would welcome them. Throw them in the comment section. Let's all learn together because we need to be angry enough to innovate. We can't be eating with our belly full with somebody's food and be innovative. No, it's not possible. I will say this. Assuming two areas. Assuming access to go to foreign institutions or foreign colleges are blocked for all Africans. Just say, I'm just making a conjecture. That's all. Let's say a law can say no African can attend any foreign college. Number two, no African can come abroad to seek medical care in America or in Dubai or in London or Frankfurt, whatever it is. The day that kind of law, if that kind of law were to be in place, I tell you, 5 years after that, Africa will build some of the best medical institutions on this planet. If that were to be the case, Africa will build some of the best educational institutions in the world. Because we will innovate. But here we are. Because we don't innovate, anytime somebody is sick, the next thing they jump them straight on the next available flight out to the US, to Johns Hopkins University Teaching Hospital or Mayo Clinic or which one's the one in Houston, that the cancer center at Houston. I've forgotten the name. Anderson Medical Center in Houston. They'll take them there. Or Guy's and St. Thomas's Hospital in London for treatment. And because of that, we do not innovate in our own healthcare institutions. You go there, everything is in disarray. Patients are dying needless deaths. Crazy bureaucracies, right? The patient is sick. The patient is so sick, they can't do anything. The patient needs to do imaging or whatever it is. You need to take the patient out of the ward, wheel them 4 or 5 miles away on tarred road to take the patient to go and get a simple x-ray. These things don't make sense. They don't make sense. Why? Because we are not innovating there. Because we are comfortable. Anything happens, we just jump on the next available flight and leave. I'll end with this. There's this conflict with brewing, this your conflict, whatever you call it, between the US and South Africa going on right now. The politics of it is there, and the morality of it is also there. But for me, I look at it from the standpoint of, okay, so if you don't know it, let me just quickly share the highlights. So President Trump recently said he was going to suspend aid to South Africa and investigate the government's desire to, he used the word, take white people's land from them in South Africa. That's, I'm paraphrasing. And it has become a big international thing between the two sides. So what has happened is that, yes, if, assuming South Africa was very dependent on USAID, guess what would have happened? It will be cut in an instant and their economy will just collapse overnight. But I think when they were doing it, they realized that the USAID or whatever portion to South Africa's economy is actually like a drop in the ocean. It's minuscule. The government can just use one finger, just flick it off the table, and it will not change anything in South Africa. Assuming it was another country where that had happened, that means a foreign organization, a foreign country can dictate your local policies because you took their aid. Because you took their aid. And frankly, for those who care to know, to me as an African, I don't see it that way. I see the president just being who he said he is. He is American first. And also, I think the president is protecting his own people, his white people. To me, that there's no secret about it. He's like a guardian of all white people around the world. And the same, Africans. Who is protecting you? Who is protecting us collectively? That's why we can't afford to be disorganized and disunited. We can't. That's why I've been ramming this, that we need to have a policy of free movement of people, goods, and services across the entire continent to bring that cohesion. Because yes, Trump is taking care of his own. Who is taking care of you? Nothing, nada. And it complicates, because when things were going good for South Africa was actually maltreating fellow Africans, which is terrible. Now that potentially these kind of issues happening with the United States, they will need the support of the entire Africa. They will need it. So I think this is all about lessons. What lessons can we all learn? Can we all learn? Because I think the morality of it is a group of people migrated many, many, many years to live in South Africa, my tiny minority. Over time, they were controlling the biggest, juiciest land in the country. And I'll use this loose term, probably 90-10. It could even be more. So maybe 10% of the population was controlling 90% of the land of South Africa. And then when the blacks started pushing back, oh, this is unfair, there arrived apartheid. And apartheid is a brutish form of oppression, brute force oppression. Went about several decades, and then Mandela came. And Mandela was in prison for 20-something years, God knows. He came out, and then they started proper multi-party democracy. That's where, to me, I think South Africa was. So fast forward the years, the remnants of apartheid has still been there. For those of us who don't know much about their local, that's for those of us who are afar, looking from afar. These are what we think. The remnants has been there, where wealth has disproportionately been in the hands of the few white minority in South Africa. Yes. You can make an argument about, what have black people been doing, whatever. That, you can make all the argument, but that's the fact. Whites control more land, control more resources, control everything in South Africa. I think the only thing they do not control is political power. That's all. Because everybody has one vote. So fast forward, I think the government is seeing that the effects of the disparities too much, and they have tried to find ways and means, I think, to level the playing field. Trying to find ways and means to say, no, 10% or whatever percent of people cannot control this huge amount of land. There must be some balance to reset it. So if somebody looks at it and says, hey, you are doing it to stifle other people, I don't look at it that way. I see that equality or justice must prevail worldwide. Whether you are black, white, brown, I don't care. I am an advocate for equity and equality. So my brothers and sisters, if you're watching this in your African, I want to employ that we need to be united. The aid, frankly speaking, we don't need it unless it's absolutely necessary. Else, it will keep getting us poorer. All right, peace. If you haven't subscribed, do so. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.